Welcome to the Putback here on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley, SNY's NBA insider. And on the Putback, we are here to break things down, Knicks, and across the NBA for the next 30 minutes or so. Got two great guests with me today. Jerry Ferrara, you know him from Entourage. You know him from Power. You should know him from the Throwback show that he has with Matt Leinart, which is every Thursday, anywhere you find your podcasts. And I have Mill Media, Knick fan, content creator, I think an up-and-comer here in the New York media scene. So I'm excited to have these two. And as always, we're going to get started with the baseline here. And since the All-Star break for New York, the Knicks beat the Bulls in a nail-biter, and obviously they got blown out in Cleveland and in Boston. That lowered their record to 0-7 against the Cavs, Celtics, and the Thunder. You throw the Grizzlies in there, they are 1-7 against the top two teams in each conference. And I'm wondering, Jerry, before we get into that, you tweeted earlier this afternoon, you got a lot on your mind. On your mind right now. Let's get right into that.
So many things. And you also left out that nice overtime finish versus the Hawks, which I was at with my son, his first Knicks game. The overtime really questioned my parenthood. I felt like the kid was done by the midway through the fourth. Look, it's just a saga of ups and downs. I always waffle between trying to stay positive because I do think as a Knicks fan, and I'm an old Knicks fan, it's easy to get super negative with this team because we're finally in the hunt and we have all these aspirations, which we have not had for a very, very long time. So it's very easy to get upset when you are 0-7 versus Celtics and Thunder and Cavs, like we've been saying. I've justified it in my head and I feel okay about it now. Super disappointing, but ultimately none of it matters. What matters happens in the playoffs. And I don't think we've seen this team fully formed just yet. And I do think easily a game against the Cavs and the game against the Thunder were kind of thrown away. Very, very winnable games. Should have been won, in my opinion. So if they're 2-5, is the world crumbling? I know it's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, and they didn't close the deal, but I'm not panicking by any stretch. I'm on the roller coaster, and I'm enjoying I'm saying, let's run it again. I'm fine with the roller coaster.
And if you've been on that roller coaster, Jerry, from the 90s through the 2000s, 2010s, it's been a lot of downs, a lot of bumps. So I'm sure you can appreciate this stretch now, maybe more than some younger Knicks fans, maybe not. But Mel, I'm curious for you, what's your level of concern? Because you had tweeted, I can't handle this anymore over the weekend. So what are your thoughts with the loss to Cleveland, the loss to Boston, and just in general?
I'm actually super concerned about this team. Unlike Jerry, right now I'm just feeling a little embarrassed, to say the least, as a fan, with the national media headlines saying we're pretenders, we're frauds. It's not a good look for us. And I mean, 0-7 against top teams, that's the truth. You can't really hide around it, and we're being exposed for it. I'm concerned because those are the teams we're ultimately going to have to face. Those are the teams we're going to have to beat to win a championship. So if we can't beat them now, I'm not much confident that we can beat them in the playoffs or in the finals. We've seen a lot of great regular season wins, especially a recent one like the overtime win against the Bulls. It gives you confidence in games like that, but I just can't feel too confident when we lose against top teams like the Celtics, like OKC, and it's not really a close competitive fight. More so we're getting blown out. I think it's okay to be concerned about that. I see a lot of fans going crazy, especially over social media right now. This team is still figuring it out, and a lot of fans have a win now mentality, and it might take a year, it might take a few years, but fans want to win. I can't blame them. Look at the drought we've had since we've had a chip, and when an organization makes moves like to get Cat, and when they make moves like trading 5 picks to get Bridges, they have a right to be mad when they're not able to compete with the teams they should be competing with.
Yeah, the margin of victory and obviously just not being competitive, to me, should raise some alarms internally. There's been, I guess, fans, media, some talk about Tom Thibodeau and his role in all this. And Jerry, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the coach, his role in it, and where you are on Tibbs.
I am certainly guilty, and I know Josh Hart and Brunson kind of, poke fun at Nick's Twitter about being the minutes police. I've always been a minutes panicker. There's been times where we've been on the right side of a blowout, and I'm in all my Knicks group chat saying, why are these guys still in? Look, you cannot deny what Leon Rose and Tibbs have done since coming to New York. So for me, I'm in the not panicking mode. I don't know how you could start questioning Tibbs' role. If you want to get on about the minutes, I'm with you on that. I think there's some games I'm like, why are these guys still in? The game is well in hand. But I think he knows the team a lot better than Knicks fans do. And it's always been his reputation of minutes and all that. I mean, look, defensively, which has been the Knicks' problem. Let's be honest. Offense is not necessarily the problem right now. They're a little limited with some of the injuries, but defense has been the issue. Is there really a better coach that's not coaching currently right now that could be the guy to fix the defensive problems other than Tibbs? Because I don't necessarily know who that person is. So again, I'm not trying to be overly optimistic and just trying to pretend like these problems aren't there. I think that we've all known that the Knicks probably need a 5 and have needed a 5, and Cat is a 5, but we've seen him alongside a bigger 5. Now, a lot of people think Mitchell Robinson's gonna be the fix, and I think he can be, but he hasn't played in a very, very long time. So again, before I start panicking, I need to see this full team for a stretch that we never really got to see last year with Randall's injury and all that. I need to see the full team for a stretch before I start saying, maybe we should change the coach. And some people now are even saying, oh, Leon Rose gave up all that for Bridges. Guys, just go back before Leon Rose's tenure and look at the roster the year he took over till now. Chill out.
Where I come in is, stability is the goal for all these organizations. I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't be held accountable for the results, because they should. It's pro sports. That's how it works. But I think if you have a coach who's gotten you to this point, an executive and his group that's gotten you to this point, they deserve the benefit of the doubt in terms of seeing this thing through, certainly this season, and in my mind, into next season, before you start talking about any kind of a change at the head coaching position or the front office. I think it's very premature. That's just my view. I'm not telling anybody what to think or how to view it. And Mel, I'm curious for you as a fan, young media member, your thoughts on Tom Thibodeau's role in the struggles that we've seen recently against these top teams.
I would have to agree with Jerry on that and say it's a little premature to say fire him right now before we've seen a glimpse of this healthy team altogether. We haven't seen Mitchell Robinson on the floor with this team yet, so it's a little early to put that discussion out there. But in terms of Thibodeau's role in these recent losses, especially the ones where it's against the top teams, I mean, he's just not making the right defensive adjustments that we need him to make. A lot of times in games that we're getting blown out, it's from the get-go that we are not able to catch up. And that's because he's not making the adjustments mid-game, later in the game. And we need him to do that, whether it's switching man, switching a different defensive scheme mid-game. That needs to be done because the current one is not working. That's what we need to see because we're just getting blown out by these teams, specifically the top ones, as I mentioned. So we need to see some adjustments made. That's what good coaches do. They're not going to let their teams continue to get blown out. So I just want to see better adjustments made during the game and better playmaking calls.
Yeah, where I come down on the defense is kind of like you look at Karl Towns. I don't think the Knicks traded for him thinking that he was going to come in and be some stopper. They knew who he was, who he has been defensively. And to me, Towns is doing the job that you would expect him to do when you trade for him. He's been fantastic offensively. And I think he's giving you effort on defense, which matters. I think it counts. And Jalen Brunson, too. He's limited in size and stature, but he does give you effort. So to me, it's you look at the wings, you look at Anunoby, you look at Bridges. And if this team was constituted to be better defensively than it has been, and I think it was, then that's maybe where the shortcomings are with the wings. So it's kind of how I look at it. But Jerry, I want to know, we are not obviously at the end of the season. Knicks still have, I think, 2 games against the Cavs and a game against Boston. And what do you want to see What do you need to see in those games to kind of
I
ease
need
your
to
mind?
I need to see a little more of that third quarter versus the Celtics. And what I mean by that is, now if you want to get into I'm a storyline guy, right? Maybe it's the acting and writing part of me. What's the story away from the X's and O's? The Cavs have had to hear for 2 years how we punked them in the playoffs and we owned them and we knocked them out with ease. Mitchell Robinson destroyed them. We also had Hart back then, So I'm not saying they got up a little extra versus the Knicks than they will. They're having one of the best regular seasons of recent memory. So they've had to hear about that for 2 years. And then the Celtics all off season, after the whole Olympics fiasco with Tatum and Brown, had to hear how, the Knicks are coming. Look what they did. And every prognosticator saying the Knicks are a real threat. Not saying they got up extra. I just think that they wanted to send the message. I don't think we've responded. And for me, what I'd like to see is the intensity and fight that we saw in the third quarter from start to finish. And let the outcome be what the outcome is. I care. But if I just see that and know that that's how we need to be when the games really, truly matter, because I don't think the Knicks are catching anyone for the first or second seed. So we're 3 or 4, depending on how this thing shakes out. We're going to be seeing one of those teams in the second round, currently, all injuries and stuff aside. So give me that intensity we saw in the third quarter, and now it's our time to fight back and punch back, because like I said, we've enjoyed 2 years of kind of punking the Cavs off that playoff win, and the Celtics have been hearing how we're coming. And I think now it's time to punch back.
And all those games, I believe, are in April. So if everything goes well for the Knicks, they have Mitchell Robinson back in these games. And so, Mill, do you see it the way Jerry sees it? You need to see that third quarter more consistently in these 3 games against those top teams. What do you see?
100%. I want to see the effort at maximum 100. I want to see it above 100. I want to see these guys going out there playing hard, making the adjustments they need to do. And we just need to see a level of effort that exactly we saw in that third quarter that we've seen in previous seasons. And I know it's hard because we lost a lot of guys that were previously on this team that put in that effort. Isaiah Hartenstein, for example, DiVincenzo, those were bulldogs, and they brought a lot of hustle and energy to this team that we're now missing. You look at this team, you look at them some games, and they're lacking a lot of heart, they're lacking a lot of energy, and you can't exactly figure out why, because we have a lot of great players on our team. It's just I want to see them play better in those type of situations, and I don't want to see them just start playing in the third quarter. I want to see it from the get-go. First quarter, they need to come out there with that mentality that they can try to compete against these top teams, try to beat them, because to look at how they came out against the Celtics on Sunday after getting blown out by the Cavs, it was a real disappointment. I was hoping that they would come out better. But obviously that wasn't the case, and I want to see improvement from now on.
I mean, there were so many different reasons, right, why things went poorly against Cleveland and Boston. It's never one thing. It's never usually 2 things. It's usually 4 or 5 things. The one thing that stood out to me was Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. I think they had 3 combined rebounds between them against Cleveland and Boston. I think Bridges didn't have a rebound against Boston. And look, those guys, I get it, right? Mikal Bridges, you're chasing the point of attack defender. OG Anunoby chasing around wings. So you're not in perfect position to rebound. But neither is Josh Hart. And Josh Hart finds a way to grab rebounds. So I'm not suggesting that either of these guys need to turn into Dennis Rodman, but I do think you need more rebounding from both of them if you're going to be successful the rest of the year and in these 7-game series. So we'll see how things shake out there. And then, Bridges in particular, there's always going to be a lot of attention paid to him because of, as Mel mentioned earlier, the price paid to get Bridges from the Nets. And, the interesting thing in Brooklyn, I think they lost to Washington. So I think they're 21-36, and I think they were 21-35 last year with Bridges there. And now this is a net team that, is not trying to lose. The players want to win, but the idea is to get a high draft pick. So it's a little bit puzzling when you look at that context as well. The Bridges trade, I think the jury's still out there in my mind. But for you, Jerry, when you look at the move over the summer and where we are now, how do you evaluate that deal?
Look, This is what I find so interesting with Knick fans who I'm either close with in real life or I have a social media friendship with. It's, we got all these picks. When are we going to use them? Push in. We gotta do something with these picks. And then we push in with the picks. It's like, oh, you gave up all the picks for Bridget. It's like, which way do you want it, guys? I was pretty psyched when that move happened. Obviously, I thought there'd be more consistency from Bridges. He by far has been the most polarizing player on the roster because at one moment he's, blocking Vucevic for a game winner, or he has that chase down block for a game winner, and everyone's like, ha, 5 picks, enjoy those. They're going to be 25 to 30. And then he has a bad shooting game and doesn't grab a rebound and it gets exposed. And it's like, oh my God, we gave up our whole entire future. I am good with it because that is a player we've always had targeted and never realistically thought we could actually get because of the Nets-Knicks relationship. I don't worry about any of those picks. I think right now, currently, even though the world is crumbling because the Knicks lost 2 in a row, I still think that pick would fall at 26 right now or 27. And sure, that could be a good pick. Who knows? Do you start thinking about when you get 5 years down the road what that pick could be? Yeah, but I can't start really planning on what happens 5 years. I think for Bridges, as if he can get consistent at the right time, I think it'll all be okay. I'm fine with that trade. And obviously the cat trade threw me for a loop emotionally, like every Knicks fan. Again, totally okay with it. I sure do miss Randall and DiVincenzo. I always wanted to see that team full strength that we never got to see really from last year. But I am ultimately fine and happy with the offseason. I really am. This is the best Knicks roster. God, I think I have to go back to like 99, 2000. So I'm happy with all of it. And let the picks fall where they may, Ian and Mill. Let the picks fall where they may.
Fair enough. I think sometimes people will say, if you traded 2 firsts for maybe, a DeAndre Hunter type, and then you had those picks to use elsewhere, I think that's where people go when people who are down on this trade. I think sometimes you hear that. So I'm just curious.
But was Hunter even available until this blow up deadline? Jalen Johnson goes out, the Hawks lose. I didn't know if he was fully available until recently.
Fair. I guess I mean a DeAndre Hunter type, but also I think if you went to Atlanta and you said, hey, we have, 2 firsts and a pick swap, they would pay for DeAndre Hunter's flight up to New York. So I think, there are different ways to look at it. Mill, I'm curious for you, longtime fan, passionate observer. Where are you on the Bridges deal at this point?
I don't think it's proven to be worth it yet. I mean, he really needs to be better on both ends of the ball from what we've seen. His defense to me has been mediocre. I know he's come up big in certain situations, like Jerry mentioned, the block against the Bulls. We've seen another block by him, but I think it's been mediocre. And, his defensive rating is the worst this year since his rookie year. And that says a lot as how he's been performing. I think a lot of people saw that he was a former All-NBA defensive player, and we were excited about that. A lot of us were excited about that, but the reality is that was 3 years ago. He's not that same defender that he was in Phoenix. That was a runner-up to Defensive Player of the Year. And a lot of Nets fans, I don't really listen to a lot of Nets fans, but they've been saying that he was the same way in Brooklyn, that he was mediocre on the defensive end. He would get blown by, and that's what we're seeing a lot now is that his point of attack defense is weak. He's getting blown by. He's getting out-muscled. There's a lot of things you're noticing with his defense, and it's a little disappointing to say the least because we traded 5 picks for a player we were hoping that would push us to that, will take us to that next level defensively and match up really well against Boston, so he could be on the wing with OG. But it's been disappointing to see that. And offensively, I think that he's really up and down throughout the season. We've seen him go through slumps. Right now, he's in a slump too. The most points he's put up since February 8th has been 14 points. And, the Celtics game recently, he pretty much had 6 points before the garbage time, and then he got up to 14. But 6 points against the Boston Celtics is not going to cut it. It really isn't acceptable. He's supposed to be a solidified third option on our team. When you compare him to other third options, he's just not being comparable. He's just not competing as well as I'd like right now. Porzingis, the third option for the Celtics, and then we have Mobley. They're just doing a lot more than he's doing. I'd like to see more from him. And one thing to point out is that he's just not being aggressive enough as well. When he goes through these shooting slumps, you're not seeing aggression from him getting to the basket. A posting and toasting media site pointed out that he's attempting only one free throw per game this season. And that's just unacceptable because he's playing the most minutes in the league. So there's no reason if you're playing over 40 minutes a game that you should only be attempting one or two free throws a game. You should be getting there more often. And I definitely think that would help him with his offensive and shooting struggles. So I'd like to see him be more aggressive on the offensive end and improve on both ends, really.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it progresses, here getting into April, those tough games, and then into the playoffs. I'm a cynic. I could go poke holes at the team for the next 3 hours, but let's go positive, Jerry, because you mentioned Miles McBride, and team's 37-20, and he, to me, has come on more recently after the All-Star break. What do you think about Miles and his role? I know that he played well as a starter. Thibodeau went away from that, stayed with Precious. Some people were questioning that, but just Deuce in general with this club.
So I think he really is the X factor, especially now because the team is so thin, missing Mitch. Josh Hart's missed some time. OG missed some time. My biggest concerns were when Deuce missed that time and came back, and it took him a minute to get the shot back. Like, what I love so much about Deuce McBride's whole story is we all know he could defend, and he's super, super athletic, and everyone figured he'd never really get the jumper together, and maybe he'll be a rotation player, maybe. What I saw from him versus Philly in the playoffs last year, he was the quiet, silent assassin hitting dagger threes. When he's hitting these threes, you're going to get the defensive effort. And Tibbs has closed a lot of these games with him, even when Hart is playing and guys are healthy. So for me, I am relieved that his jumper and his three-point shooting, more importantly, seems to be back after that 5-6 game injury he went through. He definitely took some time to get it back together. But for me, I think he is, especially when hopefully Mitch gets on the floor and OG and Hart seem healthier, and we could start to put this bench together with Precious back on there and a healthy Deuce. I think he is a huge, huge key and could kind of fill a little bit of that DiVincenzo stuff that we lost. Not quite the same, but at least the knockdown shooting, which will just open everything up, and maybe even for Bridges as well.
Bill, I'm going to ask you to put your Tom Thibodeau coaching sweatsuit on. And I want to know, are you giving Miles McBride more minutes? Are you using him differently? Especially, while the Knicks have dealt with injuries, how are you using McBride?
Ultimately, I would love to see McBride get more minutes. I think he's a great player off the bench. There are certain situations, like I think the game against Cleveland, where he could have started. There are situations like that where I want Tibbs to utilize him more to our advantage. He's really blossomed from last year to this year. And I think it was hard for him because he missed some time earlier in the season, which obviously took a toll on our bench and took a toll on him as well. But I think he's getting back into a groove. And, we just saw 23 points against the Bulls, 5 3-pointers. We know he can shoot the ball now. That's evident. We know he can shoot it. It's about him getting the minutes and getting the ability to do it. That's what I'd like to see more of. He's a great player on both ends of the court. He is undersized, of course, so it's hard to match him up with other teams in that aspect. But I definitely think he should be getting more minutes.
Yeah, it's definitely, again, something to keep an eye on here. And we're turning now to the What We Learned segment of the program. What We Learned, presented by Binghamton University. Binghamton University was named the top school in the SUNY system, according to recent rankings from the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. Visit binghamton.edu for more. Knicks, obviously very close to that second apron. They're hard capped at the second apron, but in a couple days here, they will have enough room under that apron to add a veteran. They have that 15th spot open. I've been saying it for a while. TJ Warren is definitely on the radar for that spot. I think also you can add Chuma Okeke as a name on the radar, that spot. I know there's been speculation about Victor Oladipo. I haven't checked on that, so I don't know. But I know for sure Warren and also Okeke there, candidates for that 15th spot. That signing can happen later this week, and maybe you get a depth piece. Maybe if there's an injury, maybe a guy like Warren or Keki or whoever they sign could come in and help you. So a big decision for the Knicks to make later this week. Now let's get to our injury updates. Karl Anthony Towns, the knee that was hurt in Boston, today saying he got treatment on that knee and he's going to see where he is for Wednesday's game against Philadelphia. OG Anunoby, he's been back, hasn't suffered a setback since returning in that Cleveland game, so that's positive for New York. Mitchell Robinson cleared for 5-on-5 last week, very active at practice today, according to Tom Thibodeau. So he's getting closer. He said on social media he's very, 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 very close to returning. Be interesting to see what his status is for Wednesday when the Knicks come out with those statuses at 5 p.m. later today. But he'll be back soon. Whether it's Wednesday or later this week, you can count on him coming back. I'm curious, Mill, for you, what are your expectations for Mitchell Robinson? And for you, how do you think he can change things with this group?
Well, I'm hoping that he can come back and change our defense overall, because that's been the main issue for us this season, and we need help on that end of the floor. We mentioned it earlier that when we got Karl Anthony Towns, we knew he wasn't going to fill the defensive presence of Isaiah Hartenstein or Mitchell Robinson playing center for the Knicks. But with Mitchell Robinson back, our entire defensive performance can absolutely change. He is such an incredible defender, specifically in rim protection. He's a great rebounder, incredible offensive rebounder. Those are all aspects of the game that he can help us improve on, because those are all areas of the game that we're struggling in. So we need help in those areas, and he can greatly help when he comes back. Hopefully he's all healthy and he's confident, he's ready to go, and hopefully he's in the best shape that he's been in, for a while. It's been a while since we've seen him play, but his addition to this lineup can ultimately change a lot of things defensively for us. Push Cat to the 4 and have Robinson at the 5 helps a lot with our rim protection, something we've also struggled with tremendously. And, rebounding, you mentioned it before that we need more rebounds. Guys like OG and Bridges, they're not helping out as much as we've expected them to do. So having an elite rebounder like Robinson back in the lineup can help us greatly.
And Jerry, is Mitch your savior here? How are you looking at Mitch coming back? And also, as a member, low-ranking member of the minutes police, because you don't go crazy. What do you think about the minutes with Mitch, and as he's coming back, how should that be handled?
I actually think I've been promoted to sergeant of the minutes. I think I am a sergeant in the minutes police. And it's funny, I have an entire Knicks thread dedicated toward deciphering all of Mitch's social media posts. Like, what does this mean? He got his truck cleaned today. Does that mean he's getting ready? To go off of what Mill said, look, I don't want to put any kind of pressure of like, you are the savior, Mitch, but in every way, off of what Mill said, he is exactly what this team is missing. Because all those weaknesses we just spent time talking about and things we hoped would get better, he solves all that by being himself. That's the beauty. We're not saying, hey, Mitchell Robinson, we need you to be an 81% free throw shooter. We're saying, hey, Mitchell Robinson, we need you to block shots. We need you to deter people from driving and be the number 2 best offensive rebounder in the league before he got hurt. If you look back last year with Minnesota, who made the Western Conference Finals with the formula of Cat at the 4, Gobert at the 5. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what Mitch has, but Mitch sort of does the very similar things that Gobert does. Obviously, we're a very different team, but I think that we've always needed a 5, defensive 5. We've all known that. The apron stuff has prevented us from getting depth at that position. And who better to acquire at this point in the season, if he could be healthy? And that's what all Knicks fans should be crossing their fingers for. Minutes police, all of you, is the health of Mitchell Robinson, because it's not that he singularly changes everything. Fitting him in with what this team already does. You mean to tell me you give a defensive coach like Tibbs someone to funnel offensive players toward, which he hasn't had all season? Give me a break. He is the savior, but not just because we need him to do things he doesn't do. It's we need him to be healthy and do exactly what he does. Those are the exact things that this team needs.
Yeah, Knicks obviously agreeing with you guys to a certain extent because they're betting on Robinson's return here. They placed that bet at the trade deadline when they didn't make a move for a backup center. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm always objective as a reporter, but just as somebody who's been around Robinson since he got drafted here in New York, I think he deserves a shot to play with this team. So I'm very happy for him personally that he's inching his way back, and I know he cares, and I know he wants to help them win badly. So it's going to be a fun storyline over the next few weeks as he gets his sea legs under him. Another injury that we didn't really get to was Josh Hart. Josh returned in that Boston game from that knee ailment that kept him out, and obviously the Knicks, to me, go as Josh Hart goes. He does so much for them. He's so important to them. Also, Mill, Josh Hart throwing you a lob, as from what I understand, and did he, I guess, paid for some of your textbooks? Is that what happened? Can you fill me in on that a little bit?
Yeah, Josh is a really great guy. Amazing person overall. I mean, last summer I was contemplating whether I should buy my textbook or a ticket to the roommates watch party that was hosted at Central Park. And he threw it out there that I should go ahead and buy the ticket while he can get me a textbook. So he did end up buying my textbooks, and that semester ended, and he's still helping me. He bought my textbooks for the semester that recently just started. So shout out to Josh. He's incredible.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Has it been like an interaction, or is he just sending you Venmos? Like, how is that working?
We've spoken through the DMs before. I mean,
Yeah.
like, of course, I'm just like in awe that a player is even interacting with me. So I made sure to tell him, like, you're investing in the right person. Okay, I'll be interviewing you in a few years. Just wait, and I won't be asking you
Yep.
any dumb questions because I know he hates that. So
Yep.
thank you for investing in me, and yeah, it's been a fun interaction through the DMs.
That's awesome. Good job, Josh. That's fantastic. We're going to shift now to our Talkback section of the show, where we get into some of the questions that you guys are leaving in the comments. So very much looking forward to that. Before we do, Jerry Ferrara had a tweet about the Knicks summer tournament. And Jerry, I'm curious, are you going to get involved? Mill, are you getting involved? Is this thing actually going to happen? That's what I'm curious about.
I don't know if I'm getting involved. I took that all as it really seems like Jalen is excited to just make fun of all of Knicks Twitter's basketball performance, which I'm totally okay with. And I think all players should get that moment because we're obviously fans who could be super critical and emotional at times. And I think it would be pretty cool to have that kind of interaction with the Knicks fan base. I think they would absolutely go nuts for it. But yeah, it should be all in good fun. Let him critique. Let him get on Twitter and start breaking down Mill's jumper and her lack of defensive effort in the pick and roll. I'm sure it'll work out great. Just kidding, Mill. Just kidding. I know you got game. I see in your jumper. I know you can play. I know you got game.
Oh my God. No, I think I definitely agree, Jerry. I think it would be really fun for them to see how Knicks fans actually play themselves because we do critique them heavy, some of us at least, and it would be a good laugh for them. But I also think it'd be really entertaining, and it's a cool thing if they're willing to do it. Brunson, maybe even Hart gets involved. I really want to see a lot of people from Knicks Twitter. I want to see how they play, and if they're willing to if they're credited to talk about the Knicks the way that they do with how they play. But I'd definitely love to be involved. That's a really cool thing I've never seen players personally want to do before, especially not in the Knicks. So yeah, I'd love to be involved some way or another.
It's going to be fun to watch if it happens. Mr. Spenley, I'm sorry for that detour. I definitely want to know what you have for us and what questions does the audience have for us?
It's all good, Ian. My last comment on that is my money, if it ever came down to any sort of one-on-one competition, will be on our friend of the show, Sean Geddes. I have hung out with him a couple times, and he is an incredibly tall individual, and I know he can ball. So
there you go.
You guys keep an eye on Sean. Jerry, I want to come to you with the first one, our guy Ellie from YouTube. I know Mill was kind of talking about it before, just the difference in this year's team versus last year's team. I know expectations obviously play a big part of that, but Ellie said team's better than last year technically, but it sure doesn't feel like that. last year we had more heart and soul, dog mentality, blood, sweat, tears. You kind of get it. So I'm curious for you, just how you feel about the team this year versus last year. Obviously more talent on the roster this year, but it just feels a little different.
I think the biggest difference is last year's team had no expectations, meaning we were expected to be like a playoff team. But I don't think anyone before the season started last year was sitting there saying, oh, this team can go to the Eastern Conference Finals and really challenge Boston. But they played so hard and they played so tough and gritty. And it was every bit of what New York fans have always loved in every Knicks team. And we had players like Randall and DiVincenzo and Hartenstein who fit that mold perfectly. Now you fast forward to, and we never really got to see it, to be honest. When Randall went down, we never really got to see that team other than that small stretch. Now you fast forward to this team, we get Bridges, we get Cat, and now all of a sudden it's, the Knicks are coming. They're coming for the Celtics. They're the number 2 team in the East. Look out. It's championship or bust. And I'm not saying it was premature. I still feel like this team could go on a run and really shock some people, but we have lofty expectations. And again, we're 37-20. We were 37-18 before this bad 2-game losing streak. So to me, I think we're right where we should be. Again, I don't love the 0-7 stuff, but I guess it is the fact that I don't think that team really got blown out last year like this. I don't think they've had these types of games where they gave up 142 to anyone. Go look. And I feel like this year, the losses are really bad. But I think this year the wins are like when it's clicking and we put up 140 and the Knicks offense is ranked. So it's just a totally different personality than last year's team and any Knicks team for a long time. The fact that it's kind of offense first. And I think it's very different for Knicks fans to accept that. And I don't think it's going to be like that forever. But that's my take. Last year's team was insanely likable. I think this year's team it's just doing it a different way than last year's team did.
Ian, I'm curious your perspective on that. Obviously, you've covered the team for a while now and how people kind of reacted to both this year and last year. Like, how do you feel about that from where you sit?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think Jerry hit on a lot of the points that I would echo. One thing is, again, I'll go back to the kind of who's doing their job. And Karl Anthony Towns, to me, if you trade for him, you know what he's going to do. And to me, he's fulfilled that role that you would expect of him. And so where is it lacking? I mean, I think you could point to many different different directions. But when you talk about physicality, you talk about want to, you're talking about the defense. And again, I think we've seen flashes where OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges has defended very well. Mikal Bridges has had some fantastic individual possessions to seal games late in games. But the overall cohesion has not been there. And I think that's probably where Knicks fans are upset. I think that's where, people are saying to themselves, this team is softer than last year's team. Last year's team relied so heavily on offensive rebounds, second chance points. That's not what this year's team is. This is not a traditional Tom Thibodeau team. I think you could see that coming in, but the thought was, hey, with Anunoby and Bridges, we'll be okay defensively. And because that hasn't been the case all year long or for much of the season, I think that's where the disappointment is, and it's understandable.
Sure. Yeah, Mill, I want to come to you with one that's kind of dovetailing off that a bit. We talked a lot about their struggles against the elite teams, just in terms of a championship window kind of becomes sort of that conversation when the Knicks haven't been able to get to that level. And this is the first year of this team being together, which, again, goes right back to the last question. So I'm curious for you, from your perspective, how you view that championship window for the Knicks. Obviously, a lot of their guys are locked in. Mikal Bridges is eligible for an extension somewhat soon, but where their championship window lies, I'm curious for you.
I would say we have the next few years to win a championship. I would say 3 to 5. We have the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, it depends if we're moving our assets or not. I mean, I think it might be a little surprising to see what happens in the future if we decide to move on from players like Bridges or, OG. I'm not sure, honestly, what's going to happen because the fans, they're in a win now mentality. I know they want to win a chip this year. I'm not exactly sure if we're in that state right now. This team's still improving. I would give them a year personally. This year, I'm not too sure if we get there, but the next few years is we're really looking at it. We're really hoping to win a chip because again, this fandom has been in such a drought that they want to see a chip. They need it. They deserve it from what they've been through. And the players that we have, I truly thought that when we made these acquisitions during the summer that we'd have the ability to get to the finals. And obviously we haven't been able to compete with some top teams, so I was proved wrong. But I would give us another year or the next few years to actually make it to the finals. I'm not too sure about this year.
Sure, fair, especially given how they've played against those top teams. Ian, one quick one before I toss back to you. Just I know the Knicks had shoot-around practice today, and Tibbs was talking about Mitch and his status. And, I think you said he had full contact practice. I think he's been feeling good. He talked about how he's feeling the next day has kind of been the biggest item that they've hit on. But, Tibbs had said when he was asked about Mitch that, we've been out without our starting center for 50 games. He said presumably he would have been our starting center. So just a little discussion about, what that lineup might look like. I think obviously I don't think Mitch would start right off the bat, but do you think in the perfect world for the Knicks that, going into the playoffs, Mitch would be that starting center and that starting lineup would look different?
Well, they definitely see it as a weapon. That's definitely something that they want to look at, I believe, extensively. When Mitchell Robinson does come back, as you said, Matt, he's probably not going to start off the bat, but they want to see what it looks like. They want to see how effective it can be. And so if it does look good, in April when Mitchell Robinson, in a perfect world for the Knicks, is all the way back, his conditioning's back, and he and Towns are playing well together, I think you'll see it regularly in the postseason, maybe depending on the matchup. I don't know if you change that starting five. That would surprise me a little bit, but I don't think anybody should be surprised at all that to see this rolled out in a significant way once Robinson comes back. And I think it's just based on how effective the group is. And if they're effective, I think you're going to see it regularly in the postseason.
Excellent. I'm tossing back to you, but what would you provide in a Knicks Twitter game, Ian? I'll hang up and listen.
Look, man, if you need somebody to come in and set hard screens, box out, try to get a rebound or two, I'm your guy. Anything beyond that, I'd probably hurt myself. So, but in that limited role, I'm your guy. So with that in mind, we're going to go to final thoughts, guys. And what I want to know is, do you see they have Philly coming up Wednesday? Do you think the Knicks pretty much locked in to the third seed at this point? And if that's the case, that second round matchup looking like it's going to be Boston. How do you view that? And where's your hope lie, Mill?
Well, given what we just saw, it's hard to be hopeful matching up against that Boston team. They're incredible. They're the champs for a reason. And, I was hoping that when we got that defensive wing combo of OG and Bridges, that we would be able to compete with them just at an extent that would keep us in the game competitively and hopefully win a playoff series. But at this point, it's hard to know what's going to happen in the playoffs if we do match up against them. I would say that when we do get Mitchell Robinson back, it could help, definitely. But does he fix all of our problems? I don't think so. Probably not. That we're still going to have problems regardless that need to be improved upon. And the Celtics are the champs. That would be a really tough fight for us. Especially given with how our first game of the season went against them to every single game since then. An incredible shooting team, which is especially what we've struggled against, defending the 3-point line. Knicks need to lock in and just really figure out how to improve on their defense, whether it's changing up defensive schemes. It's drop coverage that shouldn't happen, honestly. Cat in drop coverage just drops too low, and it's always leaving an open shot. And you especially saw that in the game against the Celtics where he would drop too far low, and every time a Celtics player would get a little bit of room, they're letting that fly and it's going in because they're the best team for a reason. Well, they're the previous champs, of course, but they're going to make that. You can't give them that room. So I need to see defensive adjustments made to have a fair shot against the Celtics in the playoffs.
Jerry, for you, curious if we're playing that hypothetical Knicks Celtics second round, what does meeting expectations look like to you in that series and ultimately for the season.
Look, my only expectations against if and by the way, I am by no means overlooking. You mentioned are the Knicks locked in for the 3rd seed? Sure. I mean, they got a 4.5 game lead. I mean, the Detroit Pistons are absolutely on fire right now.
Right.
And they would be a really hard 3-6 matchup. I just think they would be no matter who they play, whether it was Boston. I think they give any team in the first round a lot of trouble. So holding that 3 seed is important because I think you need to have home court at least for one round. As far as it goes with Boston, last year they were historically great. Now, does that mean that it's a given and we shouldn't lace it up and try? No. For me, my expectations are play hard, go down fighting. If you can't beat the champ, I at least want to see you die on the sword. Go down fighting. And I'm going to zag while everybody else has zigged. And I know everyone is so down on this team. And let it happen now. Let all this stuff happen now. You want a soft team? Everyone's saying, oh, the Knicks are soft. You want them to get a chip back on their shoulder? Let them get embarrassed. We're all competitive as fans. Do we not think that these players are competitive? Brunson, Hart, Anunoby, Cat, do you not think there's pride? Do you think they like what's going on right now? So let's lie in wait. Let everybody sleep on us. I don't like when everybody's picking us. I hate it, actually. I hate when everyone's saying, oh, the Knicks are coming. Just let's be quiet like we were last year. Let's be quiet. Let's expect, the Knicks were 0-7 versus all these teams, and let's lace it up in the second round. I'm betting on these guys to show up and give the Celtics a hell of a time. And I would not be heartbroken if we lost to the Celtics in the second round, only because the Celtics are great, man, and they're healthy right now. We saw a fully stacked, healthy Celtics team, and we are just not at this moment. We are just not. But let it happen now.
Jerry, always zigging when everybody's zagging. That's what we love about you. And we're going to leave it there. But my thanks to Mill Media, fan content creator, and we'll be in that locker room, I'm sure, sometime very soon, asking questions to Josh Hart and the rest of the players, and Mr. Jerry Ferrara, Entourage Power. And you need to go check out Throwbacks, his show with Matt Leinart, which is all over social media, wherever you get your podcasts every Thursday. As for us here on the Putback, we will be back next week. We hope to see everybody then. But before we sign off, just want to say condolences for Al Trautwig's family and his friends. Very, very big loss for not only the Knicks community, but the New York sports community. If you're a fan of a certain age, Al Trautwig was part of your childhood, and he always made every game that he was commenting on in terms of pregame, postgame, halftime feel big, feel important, and he will be sorely missed. So again, condolences to the Trautwig family and Trautwig's friends.